I genuinely cannot stand racism. And let's confront an uncomfortable truth because when I say it and many others say it, we genuinely mean it. But let's also be honest that many individuals and institutions appear to have very little actual interest in racism ever ending because they profit from it financially, socially, and politically. If racism was to end, many would lose their platforms and likewise their revenue. According to self defense trainings and the legal use of force, to successfully claim self defense when deadly force is used, there are at least four common rules that must be present and must remain present at every moment deadly force is used and or even attempted. Rule number 1, fear of death or grave bodily harm. You must reasonably be in immediate fear of death or great grave bodily harm to yourself or another innocent person. Number 2 segues into innocent party. You must be the innocent party. You cannot have started or even escalated the conflict. Number 3, no lesser force would suffice. No lesser force would be sufficient or available to stop the threat. So if you had pepper spray or something, that's less lethal, or a taser, less lethal. Number 4, escape was not possible. You must have no reasonable means of retreat or escape, and this is subject to state specific stand your ground or castle doctrine laws. And with the no escape being possible or so on and so forth, reasonable, that does not mean that you must attempt to escape if doing so would also put you in fear of death or grave bodily harm, such as in order to escape, you would have to run into a very busy freeway. Additionally, to those four common aspects when it comes to the use of deadly force, many talk about the reasonable person test. And God knows more now than ever, we're realizing there are less and less people that we would consider quote unquote reasonable. But what this means is would a reasonable person in the exact same situation with the exact same information, would they believe the force was necessary? There is no mathematical formula for guilty or not guilty, and laws vary by state. Mr. Anthony's self defense claim fails on multiple independent grounds under the four rule framework. Remember, these common rules must be present and must remain present at every moment deadly force is used and or even attempted. Rule number 1, failed. A single push or shove by an unarmed person does not constitute an immediate threat of death or grave bodily harm sufficient to justify deadly force. The threat must be active or imminent, not a response to one's own actions and provocations. A reasonable person in the same situation would not have believed stabbing the other person in the chest was necessary. Mr. Anthony faced a light push or nudge after he had already created the confrontation and issued his own verbal threats. Moving on to rule number 2, fail. He entered a space he had no right to occupy, such as a rival school's private tent for their team. He was asked to leave approximately 15 times, refused, and issued verbal threats reportedly while reaching into his backpack. Several self defense trainings are clear. You cannot be viewed as the person who started or escalated the conflict. Mr. Anthony lost innocent party status through his own choices and actions. Mr. Anthony was not the innocent party. Rule number 3, fail. Self defense training state that if a reasonable person would have expected, you could have stopped the threat with lesser force, then deadly force is not authorized. Here, Mr. Anthony used deadly force against a non deadly physical removal from a tent he had no right to occupy. That is disproportionate by any reasonable standards. Mr. Anthony responded to a light push nudge with deadly force, such as a knife to the chest. Moving on to rule number 4, failed. Big fail. Self defense trainings emphasize that you should escape if an avenue of escape is available and becomes practical. The situation was entirely avoidable, not because of Austin Metcalf's actions, but because of Mr. Anthony's decision to stay, to make verbal threats, and to unnecessarily escalate the situation. Mr. Anthony was asked multiple times, very clearly, to leave. There were safe opportunities to avoid or escape the conflict entirely. He was asked to leave again approximately 15 times. He could have simply walked away, but he allowed his ego to get in the way. And that's very unfortunate for all involved. But ultimately, what you're seeing is this wasn't an issue with race at all. When multiple independent rules fail, the self defense claim completely collapses regardless of race. Self defense training stressed that after any use of deadly force or attempted use of deadly force, the prosecutors and or jury will scrutinize the entire timeline very meticulously, not just the final seconds. They will look back to the hours, days, or even years before the incident to understand the full story, including prior decisions, history of the interactions, the mindset, and whether the person did everything reasonable to avoid, de escalate, and potentially escape before resorting to the use of lethal force. And Mr. Anthony's case, the timeline shows he chose to enter a space he had no right to be in, chose to stay after 15 or more lawful and peaceful requests to leave were made. He chose to issue verbal threats while reaching for what was perceived to be a weapon and chose to respond to a light push with deadly force. Mr. Anthony's conduct demonstrates the opposite of what many would say is a reasonable person. That is why prosecutors and juries, or the jurors, elected to charge him with murder after a quick deliberation period.